Sell that lake, or I'll make sure your whole family ends up at the bottom of it. The HOA president screamed, pointing your manicured finger directly at my face on my very first day moving into this lakeside house. I thought I'd cower and sell my sparkling jewel behind the house for pennies, but I wasn't easy prey. With one bold move, I made them pay dearly. $3 million in fines, enough to bring down the entire board in disgrace. But this victory was just the beginning. Dark secrets about the lake and the HOA's conspiracy were lurking, ready to expose a truth more horrifying than any nightmare. Where? Are you watching this crazy story? Comment below. Music I never expected my inheritance to come with a war declaration. When my Aunt Dorothy passed away 3 months ago, she left me her beautiful lakeside house in Pine Ridge Estates along with a heartfelt wish written in her will: transform Crystal Lake into a nature preserve. As an environmental engineer who just left the EPA to start my consulting firm, it seemed like the perfect project to honor her memory. The house was gorgeous, a classic colonial with wraparound porches, offering stunning lake views. Dorothy had maintained it beautifully, and I could already envision the research center I'd build here. The morning sun dancing on the water felt like a promise of new beginnings. That promise lasted exactly 47 minutes. I was unpacking boxes when I heard gravel crunching in my driveway. Through the window, I watched a pink Cadillac SUV pull up. Followed by a black sedan, out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been assembled from a suburban power player catalog. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, coral pink business suit that probably costs more than most people's rent, and a smile that real estate agents practice in mirrors. Behind her emerged a nervous man in high late 40s, constantly adjusting his tie like it was strangling him. They approached with the confidence of people who'd never been told no. The doorbell chimed and I opened it to find the woman's smile cranked to maximal wattage. "Marcus Bennett, welcome to Pine Ridge Estates. I'm Victoria Ashford, president of our homeowners association, and this is Jake Morrison, our vice president." She gestured to the tie-adjusting man who gave me a weak handshake and avoided eye contact. "We wanted to personally welcome you and discuss some exciting opportunities for your property." Her voice had that syrupy quality that immediately put me on guard. I'd heard similar tones from corporate executives right before they explained why environmental regulations were unnecessarily burdensome. I invited them in for coffee, more out of curiosity than politeness. Victoria's eyes immediately locked onto the lake view, and something predatory flickered across her features before the smile snapped back. Oh my, what a magnifying view. Managing a property this size can be overwhelming for someone new. The insurance alone must be astronomical, not to mention environmental compliance. Water quality testing, liability concerns. She settled onto my couch, like Shone did. While Jake lurked near the door like a bodyguard, having career doubts. Something was up, and my epitrained instincts were tingling. Victoria leaned forward with renewed enthusiasm. Our development partnership had been looking for exactly this type of premium lakefront property for a resort project. They're prepared for a very generous price, far above market value. You could honor your aunt's memory and walk away with a nominee to fund environmental projects anywhere. Her pitch was smooth, rehearsed, and completely transparent. This wasn't a welcome wagon. It was a fishing expedition. I noticed she kept glancing at her phone where I could see a Blackwood for Governor sticker on the case. I looked her straight in the eye. "That's very kind, but I'm not interested in selling. The lake means too much to my family, and frankly, it's not for sale at any price. The temperature's to drop 10. Victoria's smile didn't just falter. It completed Vopod, replaced by something cold and calculating. Jake stepped backward, preparing to flee. The transformation was so sudden, I felt like I was watching Jackal become Hyde in real time. "Mr. Bennett," Victoria said, her voice stripped of all pretense, "I don't think you understand this situation. This is Pine Ridge Estates, not some backwoods commune where people do whatever they want. We have standards and very specific plans for this community's future. That lake has tremendous development potential that could benefit everyone." She stood up, shifting from gracious hostess to corporate predator. Her phone buzzed, and I heard her whisper, "Yes, Senator, I'll handle this properly." I remained seated, keeping my voice calm. The lake is entirely within my property boundaries. The HOA has no jurisdiction over my land as long as I follow zoning laws and environmental regulations, which given my background I'm confident I can handle. This wasn't the response Victoria expected. Her face flushed deep red, clashing magnificently with her pink suit. Jake was now staring at Theffler, fascinated by my hardwood finish. That's when the mask came completely off. Victoria leaned down close enough. I could smell expensive perfume mixed with desperation. "Sell that lake or I'll make sure your whole family ends up at the bottom of it," she snarled. All traces of suburban sophistication gone. The only sound was my aunt's grandfather clock ticking, and Jake's labored breathing. I stayed still, meeting her glare with calm confidence, while my mindrist, already formulating a response strategy. After a long moment, I stood slowly, deliberately. "I think this conversation is over. You know where the door is?" Victoria straightened, smoothing her suit, and attempting to reassemble some dignity. "This isn't over, Mr. Bennett. Not by a long shot." She stalked toward the door with Jake scurrying behind like a faithful lapdog. I watched from my window as they drove away. Victoria's Cadillac spitting gravel in what I assumed was her version of tire-squealing rebellion. Once they were gone, I poured fresh coffee and started thinking. In my EPA years, I dealt with plenty of bullies who thought environmental regulations were suggestions. But Victoria's reaction had been extreme, even by those standards. There was something about this lake valuable enough to make a suburban HOA president drop her facade and issue death threats on a Tuesday morning. I walked onto my back porch and looked across the pristine water, wondering what secrets lay beneath its surface. That evening, I finally read through all of Aunt Dorothy's papers. Most Wastandard legal boilerplate, but tucked in a manila folder, was an old geological survey from 1960 that made my blood run cold. According to the survey, Crystal Lake wasn't the artificial decorative pond the HOA claimed in their marketing materials. It was a natural lake fed by underground springs, sitting on significant mineral deposits of unknown composition and potential commercial value. Dorothy had known this lake was special, and apparently so did someone else. But when I opened the last document box, I found something that made everything click. A handwritten note in Dorothy's shaky script. "Marcus, if you're reading this, it means I ran out of time to warn you. They've been killing this neighborhood one family at a time. Don't trust the HOA. Save the lake before it's too late." 3 days after Victoria's charming death threat, I woke up to find my driveway blocked by orange construction barriers and a sign reading, "Emergency road repair. Authorized by City Department." The barriers looked about as legitimate as a $3 bill. Crooked and obviously placed in a hurry. No workers, no equipment, no actual road damage. Just a half-hearted attempt to make my life miserable. Victoria appeared within minutes, strutting over. In a lime green tracksuit that made her look like a tennis ball with delusions of grandeur. "Oh, hey Marcus, I see you've discovered our little road situation. The city inspector found dangerous cracks yesterday. It's very concerning for public safety." She gestured dramatically at the perfectly intact asphalt. "I'm sure you understand the importance of community safety." "It's a funny thing," I replied, pulling out my phone. "I just called the City Department of Transportation. They have no record of any repair permits for this street. They seemed very interested to hear someone was blocking public roads without authorization. They mentioned federal penalties for interfering with emergency vehicle access. $50,000 per day." Victoria's smile flickered like a neon sign with a short circuit. But Victoria recovered quickly, switching tactics like a seasoned politician. "Well, there must have been miscommunication with the paperwork. But since you're having trouble accessing your property, perhaps now would be a good time to reconsider our generous offer. We could have these barriers removed immediately." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Between you and me, Inspector Schmidt is very thorough. He might find all sorts of code violations during a full property inspection." That's when I realized Victoria had played this game before. The casual mention of Inspector Schmidt, the implied threats, the convenient timing, it all reactive corruption and coordination. I started documenting Dinjaviding with my phone camera. "Thanks for the offer, Victoria, but I'll stick with my original plan. And I'll mention Inspector Schmidt to my EPA friends when I file my complaint about unauthorized road closures." Over the next few days, Victoria's pressure campaign escalated with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. My garbage pickup was Mr. Usla Consul, due to access issues forcing me to haul trash 2 miles to the nearest dumpster. The neighborhood cafe morning became a community safety meeting about concerning activities at the Bennett property. Victoria sent emails warning about unregulated scientific activities that could contaminate our water supply. Victorious Masters was hiring Apex Security, a 2-man operation consisting of a retired mall cop named Dennis and his nephew, who looked like he'd been rejected from reality television. They drove around in a white pickup with magnetic door. Signs, shining flashlights at my house every hour. Dennis would park across from my driv wall while eating gas station sandwiches, while staring at my house like I might spontaneously combust. The breakthrough came when Garrett Mitchell approached me during one of my evening walks around the barriers. The 60-year-old retiree looked like he hadn't slept in days, constantly checking over his shoulder. "Marcus, I need to tell you something, but not here. Too many eyes watching." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop outside Pine Ridge, away from Victoria's surveillance network. At the coffee shop, Garrett's story unfolded like a horror movie. The Hartley family didn't just move away 3 years ago. Marcus Victoria destroyed them systematically. First came the road closure, then code violations, then anonymous complaints to child services. When they still wouldn't sell, someone planted drugs in their car during a routine traffic stop by Officer Martinez, who golfs with Victoria every Thursday. Garrett's hands shook as he stirred his coffee. They sold for 30% of market value and disappeared. In the middle of the night? 8 families in 5 years, all the same pattern. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. Garrett looked around one more time before leaning closer. "Because my wife Sarah is fighting cancer, and we can't afford to lose our health insurance. Victoria's been very clear about what happens to people who don't support community initiatives. But I can't watch her destroy another family, especially not Dorothy's nephew. Your aunt tried to warn people, tried to document Victoria's methods. That's why she had to be stopped." The implication hit like a freight train. "You're saying Victoria killed my aunt?" Garrett nodded slowly, not directly, but Dorothy was asking. Too many questions threatening to contact federal authorities about environmental violations. 3 days before she died, Dorothy found evidence that Victoria was dumping something into the lake at night. He showed me a shaky video of figures in hazmat suits, pouring liquid from containers into the lake under darkness. "I took this 2 weeks ago. They're still doing it, Marcus. Whatever they're hiding under that lake, they're willing to kill for it." As I drove home through my daily barrier obstacle course, my mind raced with implications. Victoria wasn't just trying to buy my property. She was systematically eliminating anyone who might interfere with whatever operation she was running. Geological survey, the mysterious calls to Senator, the environmental contamination. It was all part of something much bigger than a simple HOA power trip. That night, I researched the Hartley family online and found exactly what Garrett described. Local newspaper archives showed a brief mention of their sudden relocation. But social media told a different story. Mrs. Hartley's Facebook showed a progression. From happy family photos to desperate pleas for legal help, followity, complete silence. The last post simply read, "We tried to fight, but some battles can't be won. Pray for the next family who tries to stand up to them." But when I scrolled to the comments, I found something that made my blood run cold. A comment from Dorothy Bennett posted 2 weeks before her death. "The Hartleys didn't disappear. They were forced out. Done. I think I'm next." The next morning, I called Alina Rodriguez, an environmental lawyer I'd worked with during my EPA days. Alina specialized in cases where corporate greed met environmental destruction. Noosh had a reputation for taking down polluters with the precision of a surgical strike. When I explained the situation at Pine Ridge, her voice sharpened with interest. "Marcus, this sounds like exactly the kind of systematic corruption I've been investigating. I'm working on a project about local government environmental violations. I'd be happy to help Pruno because frankly I hate bullies like this Victoria woman." Lena arrived that afternoon driving a silver BMW that screamed a successful lawyer who doesn't mess around. She was exactly as I remembered, sharp-eyed and efficient, with kind of confidence that came from winning cases against opponents who thought money could buy immunity. Wes spread HOA financial documents across my dining room table, and within an hour, Alina had identified a pattern of financial irregularities that would make an IRS auditor weep with joy. "Look at this, Marcus. Victoria has been paying herself through a shell company called Pine Ridge Consulting for community development services. $2.3 million in 3 years. All approved by her as HOA president." But the real bombshell came when Alina cross-referenced the HOA's vendor payments with corporate registration databases. Aurora Development Corporation doesn't exist in any legitimate business registry. But the address they've listed belongs to a strip mall in Nevada that houses 17 other shell companies. And look at this email I found in the leaked files. She turned her laptop screen toward me, showing a message thread between Victoria and someone identified only as AD Operations. The subject line read Phase to Operation Rare Earth Extraction Timeline, and the content made my blood run cold. The emails detailed a systematic plan to acquire lakefront properties through intimidation. and algal manipulation with the ultimate goal of extracting what they called critical mineral deposits worth billions of dollars. One email specifically mentioned, Senator Blackwood will provide federal protection on sea extraction begins, confirming my suspicions about Victoria's political connections. Another message referential mining environmental oversight through controlled local inspections, explaining Victoria's cozy relationship with Inspector Schmidt. This wasn't just HOA tyranny. This was a full-scale conspiracy involving federal corruption. Alina leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. Marcus, we're not just dealing with a power-hungry HOA president. Victoria is the local front person for what appears to be a massive rare earth mining operation backed by a sitting U.S. senator. These emails suggest they've identified neodymium and dysprosium docites under your lake. Minerals that are critical for electric vehicle batteries and military applications. We're talking about an $8 billion operation hidden under suburban real estate deals. That evening, Garrett Mitchell called me from a burner phone he'd purchased specifically for this conversation. His paranoia was starting to make more sense as the scope of Victoria's operation became clear. Marcus, I need to show you something, but we have to be careful. Victoria's people are watching my house now too. We met at a 24-hour diner 30 miles outside Pine Ridge, where Garrett produced a manila envelope containing photographs and documents that painted an even darker picture of Victoria's activities. The photographs showed Victoria and several unidentified men in hazmat suits dumping industrial containers into Crystal Lake during nighttime operations. But more disturbing were the medical records Garrett had somehow obtained, showing that cancer rates in Pine Ridge had increased by 400% over the past 3 years. My wife isn't the only one, Marcus. 23 families in our neighborhood have had cancer diagnosis since Victoria started her community improvements. The correlation is too strong to be coincidental. Garrett also revealed that my Aunt Dorothy had been more involved in investigating Victoria than I'd realized. Dorothy contacted the EPA 2 weeks before she died, filing a formal complaint about suspected environmental contamination. She'd been secretly collecting water samples and had documented evidence of mercury and lead contamination in the groundwater. Victoria found out about the EPA complaint, and that's when Dorothy's health suddenly took a turn for the worse. The implication was clear. Dorothy hadn't died of natural causes. She'd been murdered to silence her investigation. But the most shocking revelation came when Jake Morrison unexpectedly appeared at the diner, looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. I saw Garrett's car and followed him here, Jake explained, his voice shaking. I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I owe Victoria $200,000 from a failed real estate investment 3 years ago. And she's been using that debt to control me ever since. She threatened to bankrupt my family if I didn't support her HOA initiatives, but I never signed up for murder and environmental terrorism. Jake produced a digital recording device from his jacket pocket. I've been secretly recording Victoria's phone calls for the past month, trying to find a way out of this mess. Last week, I recorded a conversation between Victoria and Senator Blackwood, where they discussed permanently eliminating the Bennett problem if you continued to resist their acquisition offers. They're not just trying to buy your property, Marcus. Planning to kill you if you don't cooperate? Lena examined Jake's recordings with the focusionity of a forensic investigator. The audio quality was surprisingly clear, capturing Victoria's voice as she discussed logistics for handling uncooperative property owners with cold calculation. In one particularly damning exchange with Senator Blackwood, Victoria complained about loose ends like the Bennett situation and received authorization to use whatever methods necessary to secure the extraction site. The recordings provided concrete evidence of a federal conspiracy involving environmental crimes, corruption, and planned murder. As we prepared our legal strategy back at my house, Elena's phone rang with what she described as a call from her government source. She hung up with a grim expression. Marcus, my contact just confirmed something terrifying. Victoria and Blackwood aren't just running one mining operation. They've been conducting similar property acquisition campaigns in 15 other states, targeting communities with valuable mineral deposits. Investigating this network for months, but they needed local evidence to build their case. Elena pulled up satellite imagery on her laptop showing aerial views of Crystal Lake from different periods. Look at these thermal signatures from the past year. There's industrial activity happening in Gundard, consistent with rare earth extraction operations. They've been secretly mining your lake for at least 18 months using the underground tunnel, a system that connects to your basement. That's why Victoria was so desperate to buy your property. You're sitting on top of their primary extraction point. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. But the picture they formed was more dangerous than I'd imagined. Victoria wasn't just a corrupt HOA president. She was part of a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise that had already murdered my aunt and was planning to eliminate me if I continued interfering with their operation. But with Elena's legal expertise, Garrett's eyewitness testimony, and Jake's recorded evidence, we finally had the weapons we needed to fight back. The question was whether we could expose their conspiracy before they decided to permanently silence us. I decided to skip the traditional legal route and go straight to the court of public opinion. Victoria wanted to play dirty. I'd expose her crimes in real time, where she couldn't control the narrative. That Tuesday morning, I set up my phone for a Facebook live stream and started walking toward my basement with a flashlight, ready to show Thorold what was happening under Crystal Lake. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcus Bennett, and I'm about to show you something that will blow your mind. My HOA president has been secretly mining rare earth minerals under my property, and she's willing to kill to protect her operation. The live stream started with just a few viewers, but as I descended into my basement, the numbers began climbing rapidly. I discovered the entrance to Victoria's underground Aparian the night before, hidden behind what appeared to be a storage closet that my Aunt Dorothy had kept locked. The tunnel beyond was professionally constructed with industrial-grade ventilation systems and electric lighting that led directly toward the lake. What you're seeing here, folks, is a multi-million-dollar mining operation that's been running right under my house for the past 18 months. As I followed the tunnel deep underground, my phone camera captured industrial equipment that belonged in a mining facility, not a suburban basement. Massive pumps hummed quietly, processing rare earth slurry through a network of pipes that disappeared into the lake bed. Storage containers marked with Chinese characters and Aurora Development logos lined the walls filled with what appeared to be processed neodymium and dysprosium, worth millions of dollars. This is where they've been extracting $8 billion worth of rare earth minerals, while poisoning my neighborhood and murdering anyone who gets too close. The truth. The viewer count hit 10,000 just as Victoria's voice echoed down the tunnel behind me. Turn off that camera right now, Bennett. You're trespassing on private property. She appeared with Dennis and his nephew from Apex Security, all three looking panicked and furious. Victoria had been monitoring my social media, but she'd arrived. Too late to stop the broadcast? This is not private property, Victoria, I replied, keeping the camera rolling. This is my basement, and you're the one who's trespassing. Along with Opportingen, illegal mining operation, and committing environmental terrorism, Victoria's mask completely slipped in front of 20,000 live viewers. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, we're mining here. Yes, Senator Blackwood is protecting us. And yes, we'll do whatever it takes to complete this operation. She gestured wildly at the mining equipment. You have no idea how much money is at stake here, Bennett. This lake sits on the largest rare earth deposit in North America. And we're not going to let some tree-hugging duder destroy a multi-billion-dollar national security operation. The live stream chat exploded with shocked reactions and screen recordings of Victoria's confession. That's when Elena appeared at the tunnel entrance with two FBI agents, their tactical gear gleaming under the industrial lighting. Victoria Ashford, you're under arrest for violation of federal environmental protection laws, conspiracy to commit murder, and operating an illegal mining operation on federal waterways. Elena pulled out her FBI badge with an apologetic look in my direction. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth earlier. Marcus, I've been undercover for 6 months investigating this exact operation. Your Aunt Dorothy was our first whistleblower. The FBI raid unfolded live in front of 40,000 viewers as agents, systematically documented and seized evidence throughout the underground facility. Special Agent Garcia explained to my camera that the Bureau had been tracking Senator Blackwood's mining network across 15 states, but they needed concrete evidence of federal crimes to make arrests. Miss Ashford's confession on livestream provides exactly the proof we needed to dismantle this entire conspiracy. The Environmental Protection Agency will be issuing a $3 million fine for environmental violations, and Miss Ashford will be personally liable for HOA's damages. Victoria's arrest became even more dramatic when she tried to escape through a secondary tunnel thatched to the lake shore. My livestream followed the FBI chase as Victoria emerged from a camouflaged exit near Thruwater's edge, only to discover that her pink Cadillac was completely stuck in the muddy parking area. The image of Victoria in her designer suit, frantically trying to dig her luxury SUV out of the mud while FBI agents approached with handcuffs, became an instant internet meme. Dennis and his nephew surrendered immediately, apparently having no loyalty to their employer beyond their hourly wage. Jake Morrison's redemption arc played out beautifully on camera as he provided additional evidence to the FBI agents. "I want to cooperate fully," he told Agent Garcia, while the live stream continued recording. "Victoria has been blackmailing me for 3 years, and I have recordings of her conversations with Senator Blackwood about eliminating property owners who wouldn't sell. She's been systematically poisoning this community to force families out of their homes." Jake's visible relief at finally escaping Victoria's control resonated with viewers who'd been following the story. The live stream reached 60,000 viewers as Alina explained the scope of the conspiracy that my Aunt Dorothy had died trying to expose. Dorothy Bennett contacted the FBI 2 months before her death with evidence of environmental contamination and suspicious HOA activities. Her death triggered our investigation into what we now know is the largest rare earth mining conspiracy in U.S. history. Senator Blackwood has been using his position to protect illegal mining operations that have contaminated groundwater in dozens of communities across multiple states. As FBI agents led Victoria away in handcuffs, she made one final attempt to threaten me on camera. "This isn't over, Bennett. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Senator Blackwood will have you destroyed." But her threats rang hollow as Agent Garcia informed the livestream audience that Blackwood had been arrested simultaneously at a campaign fundraiser in the state capitol. The senator's arrest warrant was executed 20 minutes ago. His entire network is being dismantled as we speak. The livestream ended with Crystal Lake being officially designated as a federal crime scene, with EPA cleanup crews already mobilizing to address the environmental contamination. My phone was buzzing with interview requests from national news outlets, but all I could think about was my Aunt Dorothy's final note warning me to save the lake. Thanks to her courage in contacting the FBI and a little help from social media, we done exactly that. Victoria's $3 million fine would fund the lake's restoration, and her 15-year federal prison sentence would ensure she never threatened Anna Thurfamley again. But as the FBI agents finished securing the crime scene, Agent Garcia pulled me aside. With concerning news, Mr. Bennett, Victoria, and Blackwood were just middle management in this operation. Our investigation has uncovered evidence of a much larger conspiracy involving foreign mineral rights and national security implications. This victory is just the beginning of a much bigger fight. The FBI investigation expanded rapidly after Victoria's live-reamed confession went viral, with over 2 million views in 24 hours. Agent Garcia established Ackerman Center in Piners Community Hall, coordinating raids across 15 states. As scope of Senator Blackwood's criminal enterprise became clear, Project Clean Sweep wasn't just about Crystal Lake. It was a nationwide conspiracy to illegally extract rare earth minerals from dozens of communities using the same intimidation tactics Victoria had perfected. The senator's arrest at his gubernatorial camp fundraiser had been broadcast live on CNN, showing him in handcuffs while surrounded by wealthy donors who'd suddenly discovered urgent reasons to leave the event. Elena's true identity as an FBI environmental crime specialist explained her immediate availability to help with my case. The Bureau has been tracking Blackwood's network for 18 months. Marcus, your Aunt Dorothy was our first real insider when she contacted us about the environmental Alveonians. Her death accelerated our timeline because we realized how dangerous these people were becoming. She showed me a map covered with red pins representing similar operations in Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, and 12 other states. Each location follows the same pattern: shell companies, corrupt local officials, systematic intimidation of property owners, and environmental destruction hidden behind suburban development projects. Victoria's recuperation from federal detention was surprisingly comprehensive, apparently motivated by a desire to reduce her potential sentence from 25 years to something she might survive. She's providing detailed information about the entire network. In exchange for testimony against Blackwood and the foreign investors, Elena explained during our debriefing session, Victoria documented everything meticulously, including communications with Chinese mini-consortia, who were purchasing the extracted minerals through offshore shell companies. This isn't just environmental crime. It's economized espionage on a massive scale. The medical evidence that Garrett had uncovered became crucial to the federal case. EPA testing confirmed that groundwater contamination in Pine Ridge matched patterns found at 13 other Blackwood operation sites where cancer rates had increased by similar percentages. 23 families in your neighborhood developed cancer directly related to mercury and lead contamination from the rare earth extraction process. Agent Garcia explained Victoria knew exactly what she was doing when she approved the dumping of mining waste into your local water supply. This constitutes premeditated mass poisoning. Victoria's federal trial begins 6 months after her arrest. with my live stream footage serving as primary evidence of her criminal conspiracy. The courthouse was packed with families from affected communities across multiple states, many wearing shirts that read, "Justice for Dorothy Bennett," in honor of my aunt's role as the first whistleblower. Victoria's defense attorney tried to portray her as a small-town pawn manipulated by powerful federal politicians. But the prosecution's evidence painted a picture of a calculated criminal who had personally ordered the deaths of environmental advocates in at least 4 states. The sentencing hearing was emotionally devastating as victim after victim testified about losing family members to cancer, losing their homes to fraudulent legal maneuvers, and lost in our life savings to defend against Victoria's systematic harassment campaigns. Mrs. Hartley traveled from their new home in Oregon to describe how Victoria's threats had forced them to abandon everything and start over with nothing. She told us that accidents happen to families who don't cooperate with community development projects. Mrs. Hartley testified through tears. "We were so terrified that we sold our house for 30 cents on the dollar and a sapper in the middle of the night." Judge Matthews delivered Victoria's sentence with unusual emotion, clearly affected by the scope of her crimes against entire communities. 15 years in federal prison, $3 million in environmental restoration fines payable to Mr. Bennett's Crystal Lake Cleanup Fund, an additional $2 million in victim compensation distributed among the 57 affected families. Victoria's face remained emotionless as the gavel fell. But Jake Morrison, who had received immunity for his cooperation, wept openly in the gallery. The courtroom erupted in applause from families who had waited years for this moment of justice. Senator Blackwood's downfall was even more spectacular than Victoria's, as FBI raids uncovered evidence of a corruption network thought reached into the highest levels of federal environmental oversight. Blackwood used his Senate committee position to block EPA investigations, tow his mining operations while simultaneously accepting $50 million in bribes from Chinese mineral companies, Alina explained as we watched his arrest footage for the 10th time. He essentially sold American natural resources to foreign adversaries, while poisoning American communities to hide his crimes. The restoration of Crystal Lake became a model for environmental cleanup at contaminated sites across the country, using Victoria's $3 million fine as seed money. I established the Dorothy Bennett Environmental Research Center, which attracted scientists from universities nationwide to study rare earth extraction damage and develop remediation techniques. The lake's water quality improved dramatically within 6 months as EPA crews removed contaminated sediment and installed advanced filtration systems. Property values in Pine Ridge increased by 40% once the environmental hazards were eliminated, and the community voted to dissolve the HOA permanently in favor of democratic neighborhood governance. Garrett Mitchell's transformation from fearful witness to community leader was remarkable to observe. "My wife Sarah's cancer went into remission once we stopped drinking contaminated groundwater," he told me during the lake cleanup ceremony. "Victoria stole 3 years of our lives, but now I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure this never happens to another family." The residents elected Garrett as the first president of the Pinaragic Community Council, replacing the corrupt HOA structure with transparent democratic processes. Jake Morrison's redemption story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of financial desperation and moral compromise. "I let Victoria control me because I was too proud to declare bankruptcy and start over," he admitted during his testimony. "But watching families get poisoned and murdered while I stayed silent will haunt me for the rest of my life." Jake used his real estate knowledge to help displaced families find new homes and testified at congressional hearings about HOA reform legislation. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, Pine Ridge Estates had transformed from a community by environmental crime into a thriving example of sustainable suburban development. The Dorothy Bennett Memorial Preserve attracted thousands of visitors annually, generating tourism revenue that supported local business while educating the public about environmental protection. Alina and I announced our engagement at that preserve's dedication ceremony, surrounded by families whose lives had been saved by my aunt's courage and sacrifice. But the victory celebration was tempered by ongoing concerns about the broader implications of Blackwood's conspiracy. "We've dismantled one network, but intelligence reports suggest similar operations may be active in Alaska, Nevada, and the Dakotas," Alina warned during our final feed briefing. "Environmental crime is becoming increasingly sophisticated, and we need communities like Pine Ridge to stay vigilant against future threats." My live stream exposing Victoria's mining conspiracy had triggered something far beyond what I'd expected. Within weeks of her arrest, communities across the country began demanding investigations, their own HOA activities and suspicious environmental changes. The hashtag number Crystal Lake Scandal Beckham, a rallying cry for environmental justice, inspiring ordinary citizens to challenge powerful interests that had seemed untouchable just months before. My phone rang constantly with interview requests from major networks, documentary filmmakers, and congressional staffers preparing for oversight hearings. But the most meaningful calls came from families in small towns who recognized Victoria's tactics in their neighborhoods. The first copycat investigation emerged in Copper Creek, Montana, where residents noticed their HOA president driving a brand new Tesla, while property taxes mysteriously increased to fund infrastructure improvements that never materialized. Local environmental testing revealed rare earth contamination patterns identical to those we'd found in Crystal Lake. And FBI raids uncovered another multi-million-dollar extraction operation hidden beneath a golf course. Similar discoveries followed in Wyoming, Colorado, and Nevada, each investigation lending back to financial networks connected to Senator Blackwood's corruption empire. Elena's transition from undercover FBI agent to private practice environmental lawyer allowed her to coordinate legal strategies across multiple states, creating what she called the Crystal Lake network of communities fighting similar battles. We're not just winning individual cases anymore, Marcus. We're dismantling an entire system of environmental crime that has been operating with impunity for decades. Her new law firm, Rodriguez Environmental Justice, opens satellite offices in affected communities, providing legal representation for families who couldn't afford to fight corporate polluters alone. The federal government's response exceeded our most optimistic expectations when Congress passed the Dorothy Bennett Environmental Protection Act, requiring community consent for all mining operations near residential areas and establishing harsh penalties for environmental crimes involving rare earth extraction. The legislation included a provision mandating that profits from illegal mining operations be used to fund cleanup efforts and victim compensation, essentially making environmental crime economically unsustainable for future conspirators. And my role as an environmental advocate evolved beyond anything I'd imagined when I first inherited Aunt Dorothy's house. Congressional testimony before the House Environmental Oversight Committee gave him a platform to explain how ordinary citizens could identify and resist environmental crimes in their communities. The warning signs are always there, I told the packed hearing room. Mester illnesses, unexplained strict projects, HOA, officials with sudden wealth, and systematic intimidation of anyone who asks questions. But most importantly, communities need to know that they have the power to fight back when they stand together. The Dorothy Bennett Environmental Research Center became a destination for scientists and activists from around the world, drawn by our unique combination of contamination, research, and community organizing. Dr. Sarah Chen from MIT established a satellite research program studying the long-term health effects of rare earth contamination, while Professor James Richardson from Stanford developed new techniques for rapid detection of illegal mining operations. The CENT's annual budget grew to $10 million. The environmental foundations recognize the importance of our work in preventing future environmental crimes. Personnel relations deepened as Alina and I planned our wedding for the following spring at the Research Center, with Garrett Mitchell officiating as a newly ordained minister and Jake Morrison serving as an unlikely best man. 2 years ago, I was helping Victoria destroy families, Jake reflected during our engagement party. Now, I'm helping families rebuild their lives. Sometimes redemption comes from the most unexpected places. His real estate expertise proved invaluable in helping displaced families from other Blackwood operations find affordable housing in communities with clean water and honest governance. Victoria's imprisonment generated a steady stream of threatening letters that became increasingly desperate as appeals. Courts rejected her attempts to overturn the conviction. You may have won this battle, Bennett, but there are forces much larger than Senator Blackwood, who will never forgive what you've done. Read on a particularly ominous message. FBI analysis revealed that Victoria was receiving outside financial support for her legal appeals, suggesting that her foreign business partners remained active despite the criminal possessions. The economic impact of our environmental justice movement reached far beyond Pine Ridge Estates. Its property values in affected communities increased dramatically once contamination was eliminated and honest governance was restored. Real estate investors began using Crystal Lake certification as a marketing tool, advertising properties in communities that had undergone FBI, environmental investigations, and received clean bills of health. The tourism industry embraced environmental protection as families sought vacation destinations with demonstrated commitments to clean water and transparent governance. International attention focused on our success when the United Nations Environment Program invited me to speak at their global conference on environmental crime prevention. The Crystal Lake model demonstrates that local communities have the power to protect themselves against environmental Ashonatale when they have access to information, legal resources, and federal law enforcement support. I told delegates from 50 countries. Several European nations expressed interest in adopting similar legislation to prevent rare earth extraction crimes in their territories. But the most significant development came when Alina received an encrypted email from an FBI whistleblower. Warning about Project Clean Sweep 2.0. The message contained satellite imagery showing new mining operations in Alaska and the Dakotas that followed patterns identical to Blackwood's original network. The infrastructure for environmental crime remains intact, the anonymous source warned. Victoria and Blackwood were middle management. Real decision-makers have learned from their mistakes and adapted their methods. This revelation led to expanded congressional investigations into the role of foreign governance in American environmental crime, particularly Chinese state-owned enterprises that had been purchasing illegally extracted rare earth minerals through cryptocurrency transactions designed to avoid federal oversight. Senator Elizabeth Warren's office contacted Alina directly, requesting our assistance in drafting legislation tapered in foreign exploitation of American natural resources through corrupted local governance structures. The scope of ongoing environmental crimes became clear when FBI analysis revealed that Senator Blackwood's network had operated in 37 states over 15 years, generating approximately $50 billion in illegal mining revenue, while poisoning hundreds of communities and causing thousands of preventable deaths. We're not just talking about environmental crime anymore, Agent Garcia explained during a briefing at the research center. This was economic warfare disguised as suburban development, targeting American communities for systematic resource extraction by foreign adversaries. My Aunt Dorothy's legacy expanded beyond anything she could have imagined when Penarage became the first community in America to achieve complete environmental remediation after rewrite contamination. The lake's water quality now exceeded federal standards for drinking water. Rare bird species returned to nest along the shores, and the ecosystem showed no detectable traces of the industrial contamination that had threatened to destroy it permanently. Environmental scientists use Crystal Lake as a baseline for measuring recovery potential at contaminated sites worldwide. As I stood on the dock where Dorothy used to feed ducks every morning, watching Alina conduct water quality tests for her latest research project, I reflected on how a simple inheritance had become a movement that changed environmental law across the country. The $3 million in fines we'd collected from Victoria had grown into a $50 million environmental justice fund, supporting communities fighting similar battles and ensuring that Dorothy's sacrifice would protect future generations from environmental Ashonatale. But Elena's discovery of encrypted communications between Victoria and unidentified foreign contacts suggested that our victory in Pine Ridge was just the beginning of a much larger fight. Marcus, I think we've only scratched the surface of this conspiracy, she said, showing me intercepted messages, discassinate extraction sites, and improved operational security protocols. The fight for environmental justice was far from over, but we now had the resources, expertise, and legal framework to take on whatever challenge awaited us. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, the grand opening of the Dorothy Bennett Environmental Research Center drew over 1,000 attendees from across the country, including families whose communities had been liberated from similar mining conspiracies. The ceremony took place on a crisp October morning with Crystal Lake sparkling behind the podium. Its water's now so clean that you could see fish swimming 20 feet below the surface. Senator Warren delivered the keynote address, praising the courage of ordinary citizens who refused to let corporate criminals poison their families and steal their futures. But the most moving moment came when Garrett Mitchell unveiled a bronze plaque dedicated to my Aunt Dorothy, reading simply, "She saw the truth and refused to stay silent." Elenon, I announced our engagement during the ceremony with Jake Morrison surprisingly volunteering to handle feuding planning logistics. After helping Victoria destroy so many families, I want to help create something beautiful, he explained while wiping away tears. The transformation in Jake over the past year had been remarkable. From Victoria's terrified accomplice to a passionate advocate for environmental justice, his real estate expertise had helped 37 displaced families find new homes and communities, with verified clean water and transparent governance, earning him a presidential commendation for civilian service to environmental protection. Their search since opening day also marked the completion of our most ambitious project. A partnership with MIT and Stanford that would train the next generation of environmental crime investigators. Dr. Sarah Wu Chen's groundbreaking research on rare earth contamination detection had already prevented 3 potential mining conspiracies from taking root in vulnerable communities. The Crystal Lake model isn't just about cleanup and justice, she explained to the gathered scientists. About creating early warning systems that prevent environmental crimes before they can destroy lives and ecosystems. Victoria's final attempt at revenge came exactly 10 years into her sentence when she was granted early release for good behavior and immediately violated her parole by attempting to contact Chinese investors about reclaiming mineral rights to Crystal Lake. FBI surveillance captured her meeting with foreign agents at a casino in Nevada, leading to her immediate rearrest and an additional 5 years in federal prison. Some people never learn, Agent Garcia commented as we watched the arrest footage. Victoria Ashford believes that money can buy her way out of the consequences of environmental terrorism. The community prosperity that followed our victory exceeded everyone's expectations. Pine Ridge became the most sought neighborhood in the state, and with property values increasing by 300% as families from across the country were relocated to live in a community with verified environmental integrity. The local economy boomed as Icarus brought thousands of visitors annually to see the lake where ordinary citizens had defeated corporate environmental crime. Local businesses thrived, unemployment dropped to 0, and the community voted unanimously to maintain its democratic governance structure permanently. Senator Blackwood's death in federal prison during his 3rd year off incarceration marked the symbolic end of his criminal empire. Though investigations into his network's international connections continued under classified federal programs, his assets totaling over $200 million were liquidated to fund environmental cleanup efforts and victim compensation programs across 17 states. The Blackwood Foundation, renamed the Environmental Justice Foundation after his conviction, became the largest source of funding for community-based environmental protection programs in American history. My happiness reached levels I'd never imagined possible as Alina and I settled into married life while continuing our environmental advocacy work. Our wedding at the research center had been attended by over 500 people, including families from every community that had been liberated from mining conspiracies. Mrs. Hartley served as Elena's matron of honor, having moved back to Pine Ridge after the environmental cleanup made it safe for her family to return home. This plaza represents hope for every family that's ever been forced to choose between their health and their home, she said during her wedding toast. The lake ecosystem's recovery became a model for environmental restoration worldwide, with rare bird species returning to nest along shores that had been contaminated just 2 years earlier. The water quality exceeded federal standards for drinking water, and marine biologists documented the return of fish species had been absent for decades. Children from the community's swim team practiced in waters that had once been, their laughter echoing across the lake where my Aunt Dorothy had once feared to walk alone. International reconing of our environmental justice work culminated when the United Nations designated Crystal Lake as a World Heritage Site for environmental recovery, the first such designation in North America. Delegations from 30 countries visited the research center to study our methods for community-based environmental protection, with several nations adopting similar legislation to prevent mining conspiracies in their territories. The global impact of my aunt's courage to speak truth to power had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. But our most important legacy was the network of communities that had learned to protect themselves using the Crystal Lake model. Over 300 neighborhoods across 42 states had successfully identified and prevented environmental crimes using our early detection methods and legal strategies. The Environmental Justice Foundation's annual conference had become the largest gathering of grassroots environmental advocates in the world, proving that ordinary citizens could defeat the most sophisticated corporate criminals when they worked together. The final surprise came. In our 7th year of marriage, Elena announced that she was pregnant with twins. Dorothy would have loved being a great aunt, she said, as we walked hand in hand along the lake shore where my aunt had once fed ducks every morning. The children would grow up swimming in clean water, breathing clean air, and understanding that they had inherited a world where environmental justice was possible because one woman had refused to stay silent when she witnessed crimes against nature and community. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe Alex Stories.